Hello, Frank.
Oh yeah, there's Frank. Hi, Frank.
Hello, everyone.
All right, it's 4:31, and we will call our Personnel Commission meeting, which is a special call meeting for April 17th, 2024, to order. And Mr. Secretary, could you please call the roll and establish our quorum?
Of course. Commissioner Goldstein,
Present.
Chairman Roeder,
Here.
Vice Chair Carter. Here. Everyone's here.
Okay, we have a quorum. So because this is a special call meeting, our agenda is somewhat abbreviated. So we will go straight to public comments. If anyone has a public comment, we will be discussing, I think, the two items 5 and 6. So those can be talked about later. But go ahead, if somebody's got a public comment, raise your virtual or actual hand, please. I don't think I see any public comments, just so that we know, because again, this is a special call meeting and an abbreviated meeting. We don't have commissioners' comments, we don't have district comments, we don't have executive director comments, and we don't have union comments. So this would be the time if any members representing the union wish to make a comment, they could do so now. Again, not seeing any hands. I don't think I need to put my participant thing on. No, I don't see any hands. Okay. Then we will move to approval and adoption of the agenda. As I mentioned a minute ago, I think I would like to move item 5A from consent to be a conference item. So we'll do that.
Is that a motion or?
It is a motion. Do we need motions for this purpose? Probably so,
Yeah,
I guess.
all right,
From consent.
I'll second.
Okay.
Okay.
Moved and seconded and approved unanimously. So therefore, we will go right to item 5A, which is ratification of high school custodial supervisor eligibility list, which is on page 2 of the agenda. And Mr. Secretary, would you present this item, please?
Sure, of course. So the reason for the delay was that we originally had Raider A and Raider C in mind, and Raider B at the time couldn't make it. We then went down the process and we started contacting, and we could not get a hold of Raider C. And then we found out that Raider C actually passed away. And then once we knew Raider C passed away and we expressed this to Raider B said, hey, I'm really sorry about that. I'll go ahead and ask my supervisor if I could take the day off. And so it was rectified. So we have the two Raiders. After the rating process went through, you'll notice that we have 3 promotionals. So the only way to hire someone would be a promotion because those are the top 3 ranks. And that's it. Normally we sometimes will forward this to the manager, but we wanted to, obviously, given this list, we wanted to wait. But normally, so obviously, as soon as this meeting's over, we're going to rush it right to them so they can go ahead and start that process.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Castillo. Let's see. Maybe if it's all right with the commissioners, I'll see if anyone in attendance wants to make any comments concerning this particular eligibility list. And if not, we will open it up for commissioner discussion. I don't see any virtual hands and I don't see any actual hands. So, okay, let's open it up, see if any of the commissioners want to make a comment regarding this list.
I would.
Yes.
I want to say I know this process wasn't easy, and I appreciate your department taking it on without bias.
Mhm.
So I appreciate that. The outcome is the outcome, and whatever it happens to be, I just want to say I appreciate the way you guys took it on.
Thank you, thank you. Really, the thank you goes to the team. They got creative. Some people, after someone passed away, they would have just given up, but Brian and the team pursued it, so, but thank you. I'm sure, I don't know if they're here listening, but I'll make sure to convey the message.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Oh, Erin just showed up. She must have heard you.
Mr. Goldstein, any comments?
Sure. I'll say that it was instructive to understand the different positions during this. Clearly, we're revising our rules. I'm not sure where we'll land on the question of floating cut score
Mhm.
in that process, but this exercise has expanded my understanding of what this means on the union side, and certainly communication-wise, some areas for opportunities for improvement.
Thank you. Thank you. My comments are really exactly the same as Commissioner Carter and Commissioner Goldstein and Mr. Castillo. Anticipated everything I was going to say. I first and foremost also agreeing with Mr. Carter that this was not an easy process. This was a bit of an unusual process to undertake. And you ran into a number of obstacles, and I too want to thank you, Mr. Castillo, and the whole team for the effort that you put in and your diligence. And it would have been easy to just throw up your hands and say, too many obstacles, but we can't do this. You didn't do that. Number one. Number two, agreeing with Commissioner Goldstein that this definitely brought up and brought out some of the issues that exist and continue to exist. They've existed probably for the last 2 or 3 years with respect to these cut scores. And it is something I look forward to having, whether it's a special call meeting or whether it's part of our regular agenda at some point in the not too distant future, especially at a time when there isn't a specific eligibility list that's at stake, and rather being able to have sort of a more general discussion about how we handle these scores and that sort of thing. So I look forward to that. I had the reason I took this off of consent because I had 2 questions, and one of my questions has been anticipated and answered by Mr. Castillo, and that is the fact that this is now, there are 3 promotional candidates. So it is my understanding, just for confirmation, that it is those 3 promotional candidates that will be supplied to the hiring manager and certified as the 3 individuals. One of those 3 individuals will be selected, and all 3 of them will potentially be interviewed for that purpose.
Yes.
And I just wanted to ask the question, not that I anticipate any of this is more of a general question, but if we have these 3 individuals, and let's just say hypothetically that the hiring manager says, well, I know all 3 of these individuals, and although I think they're wonderful employees and do a great job, I don't think they're really well suited for this supervisor position. Can you please, Mr. Castillo, provide me with 3 other candidates who are on the open list? What's the response to that?
Respectfully, I cannot.
That's what I assumed, but I wanted to be sure that that's
The
the
only way that it's not these top three is if one of these three drops out.
Right.
One of them says, I'm not interested.
Right.
And then we include number one.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, is there any more discussion about this? Doesn't look like it. Then we need a motion to approve the high school custodial supervisor eligibility list.
I move we approve the high school custodian promotional list.
Okay, it's been moved,
I'll second.
moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
And now we're on to our conference item, which is Assembly Bill 2088, Opposition Coalition, and that appears as attachment A on page, not sure what page.
It's page
Page three.
Page three.
Page three. And then it looks like the bill, yes, the bill itself is a few pages. And then finally, the letter in opposition is also included. So Mr. Castillo, would you be kind enough to present this item?
Yes, of course. Thank you. There was a slight modification made, but it's the same bill as was introduced for 1699. Really what we're talking about is someone who may not have the minimum qualifications, but has the years of experience, is not in that class, but is interested in the class, can basically not test and immediately be placed in the position based on that seniority. So that's one piece of it. The other thing is that this is legislation that's being proposed, but we already have, us, Berkeley, I know I sound selfish saying that, but we already have a process in place for the 10 days transfer. So this would be duplicative, it doesn't benefit us. And then, lastly, I think that this is a way to basically circumvent the merit system. And I think that I write this in here, my own opposition to it is there's the MNBA, which establishes bargaining. And the union has every right to bargain, and management has the right to bargain. So in other words, if this is something that they want, they should bargain, not legislate so that they don't have to bargain. Again, those are my thoughts, but I thought I'd bring it forward because I kind of brought it somewhat late the last time this was proposed. This was in person. This was brought to the commission late when we had this. I think this is before you got on, Mr. Carter. So I wanted to get ahead of it. As you may know, there are already CASBO, AXA, there's already districts and cities that are opposed to it because for the same reasons I've stated. But again, I think this is an opportunity for you as a commission to discuss it, to ask questions, to ask me to follow up. Where are we with it? But I just thought I'd share it with you now, where it is now. And the last thing I'll say is the mayor, sorry, the governor, oh, forever he would be mayor for me. The governor has already expressed that this wasn't, he didn't want to go with it, although he supports classified promotions. He didn't feel that this bill benefited ultimately the kids. And I believe that's where this is going to land again. However, it does make a difference for commissions and cities and districts to say we don't support it for the following reasons. So I thought I'd attach the bill, give you my own 2 cents on it, my opinion on it, and then really give you the bullet points of what the 3 bullet points of what 2088 essentially is. So for your consideration, thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Well, once again, I will see if, I think, yes, Samantha has joined us, welcome. And so I wanted to see if anyone who is on Zoom, or perhaps the assistant superintendent would like to make a comment. And I see Frank Hernandez has raised his virtual hand, so we'll call on Frank if he can be let on.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I just read this bill before the meeting, so I'm not sure. I got more questions. I'm not sure how this would work. I guess my first question was, if I'm in a category or classification, I want to say category that's in my classification, I don't see where it says that I would automatically, by seniority, be able to move into another classification. So that's kind of concerns me. I would love if Charlie could explain that a little bit more. I don't see that there, but I do want to make a comment. You know, in the last meeting, I brought this up, and Izzy, maybe you could help me with the number. I think it's 400.20.2. That's what I was talking about, is that these openings should be posted for promotional only and given at 10 days. And that's pretty much what this bill is saying, that we should have first rights at these promotions before it's thrown out for open. And, just on the surface, I have some questions with the bill myself, but on the surface, this is something, I was inquiring about, something I was talking about, that I think this is good for classified workers. I probably have more questions, but I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Frank. Thank you. Any other comments from anyone about this bill? Don't see anyone. Okay. Maybe I'll, if you don't mind, I'll start it off. There was a webinar on April 9th by the CSPCA, the Association for Personnel Commissioners. And it was extremely well attended. There were 70 participants on that Zoom call, which is quite a few, representing lots and lots of districts up and down the state. So that was merit districts. So that was very interesting. And so there was discussion about sort of the specifics of AB 2088. So let's see how to begin. I think in partial answer anyway to Frank's comment, the automatic aspect, there is an automatic aspect of this. And the automatic aspect is that if a promotional candidate, if an existing employee, regardless of what classification that employee is in, if that employee meets the minimum qualifications of the open vacant position, then that person is automatically put into that position without any further action on the part of hiring managers or the district or anybody else. And as we all know, and this is a bit of a philosophical question, but minimum qualifications in a position are just that. They're the absolute minimum that an applicant would need to barely perform the duties of the position. So they really are very, very minimal. The differences between, I don't have the number in front of me, I think it was 1688.
You mean the prior bill?
The prior
Right,
bill,
no, it's 1680.
1689.
1699.
1699, okay. My understanding is there are basically three differences. One difference is that it now excludes management and confidential employees. The previous bill had included those two categories or classifications. And the third thing is the prior bill had said that if an employee doesn't have the skills necessary to perform the job on the first day of employment, the district would have to pay for a certain amount of training for that employee, which of course became a point of contention and a large dollars and cents aspect of this. So those three things were eliminated, and everybody was grateful to, I think it's Assemblyman McCarty, who sponsors this. We're grateful that they listened to us. As the executive director mentioned, the governor vetoed. This bill passed the Assembly, 1699 did, passed the Assembly and passed the Senate, but was ultimately vetoed by the governor because the governor felt that it would have unintended consequences that would be negative, as Charlie said, to K-12 education. And at least the overwhelming majority of participants, if not all the participants in that Zoom call, agreed that that's still the case. Then the last thing that I'll say about this before opening it up to the other commissioners is I was interested that one of the logos and groups that signed on to this letter is the Alameda County Office of Education. And that, of course, is our county Office of Education, which does carry some weight, at least in my mind. So I'll leave it there. And Commissioner Goldstein, Commissioner Carter, any comments?
Well, I don't know if my questions can even be answered by us here, but I have a question. What are the ramifications for the district for signing or not signing? It's pretty much a political statement, right? It's ultimately a political statement. So what are the ramifications, regardless of whether I agree or disagree with the bill? This is the first time I've ever seen anything come across that require, or that's even asking the districts to weigh in on. So does anyone, feel free to chime in, I'm sure it's all an opinion, but what are the ramifications for signing or not signing? Are there any, or? I don't know.
I can tell you an opinion.
Oh, well, it's all
opinion.
this is.
Right.
We don't impact the law itself.
So as a trend, I would say probably over the last several years, more and more affinity groups weigh in on things like this. And it can be about all manner of stuff. This is not just in the realm of education, right? So I don't think there's a worry about, retaliation or, that kind of problem as a ramification. It's more part of the just, stakeholder speaking up and influencing. It's not really lobbying. We, of course, could also reach out, to our rep for this area, to Buffy Wicks or to Nancy Skinner, for as long as she's still in the legislature, and tell them what we think of it. But as a part of an affinity group, this is, a way in, if you will.
So we're not actually writing a letter of support or denial as a district.
Right, the
Or
letter.
is this signature here, is that basically saying we support or?
I think this is the letter we're saying
This is the
we
letter.
support. It's, I noticed the date, is in the past. But often what happens is a letter gets put forward, it's got, several signatories and it's online, and as people sign on, they get added.
And they frankly asked me to share. They said, you have a commission. Ask them how they feel about it and present it to them. So I am.
So I think two things I would say, Mr. Carter, in response to what you were saying is, one is that the last time for 1699, as Charlie mentioned, it was much further along in the process. This is right at the beginning of the process now, which is a good thing. Last time, it was before anybody really even knew it was happening. It was much further along. There had been commission hearings and committee hearings in the Assembly and in the Senate. And a letter similar to this one was drafted by, I think, someone from the Los Angeles, either County Office of Education or Los Angeles Unified School District. I'm not sure which it was. And there were many, many more districts and more associations that signed on to that. So I think that Commissioner Goldstein is absolutely right. This is sort of a first letter, and it will probably be followed by multiple other letters that have additional signatories on it. My second point is that I think it's something that, well, first off, importantly, I think it has to be kept in mind. We would only be voting on whether our commission is opposed to this.
Right.
Whether the district is opposed to it is a entirely different matter, which would be up to the administration of the district in the first instance, and then the Board of Education in the second instance. So we're only talking about the Personnel Commission. And my personal feeling is that we do need to be pretty darn sure of what we're doing and what our position is before we sign on to something. I wouldn't want to sign on. I currently feel fairly strongly that this, for most of the reasons that Executive Director Castillo mentioned, that we already have a process for transfers, and the part about this that really bothers me the most is that it isn't limited to employees in the same classification. It goes out to, because now our transfer rules apply to employees in the same classification, and they get to transfer to a different position if they want to. So we already have that aspect of it, it seems to me. I agree with Mr. Hernandez that we should be taking a look at our promotional language and our sort of testing. This isn't exactly part and parcel of the discussion we'll have, but it's related to exams and testing and who qualifies to take an exam and things of that nature. And yes, promotion, well, it's our rules that say this and the Ed Code that says promotional candidates have priority. You know, there's truth to that. But what that actually means is not so simple to figure out. But I think we can do that. We can create a system. So for Berkeley, it sort of seems to me that we're in a position to create with BCCE, with Local 21, with the district, a system that works well for us, as opposed to being forced by legislation to do something that, I agree with the governor, may have very unintended consequences that are negative. But I think we have to be pretty sure that that's the case before we agree to sign on to something. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
I might note, to your point, Commissioner Roeder, that since the 12th, now we've had, I think, I don't have the exact count, but the number's almost doubled of people, of organizations that are also supporting the opposition. Oh, there we go. That's the updated.
Oh, is this?
Thank you.
That's
That's the updated list.
Okay. Have you all?
No.
Okay,
Keeping
so
in mind, I said this on the
it's
12th.
a list
Since the
of
12th, yeah.
also just all the other folks who signed on. So yeah, many, many more. Do you?
Thank you, Sarah.
The letter is the same, it's just,
I might also add, there, these unintended consequences are really wacky. If you do HR and you have an opportunity to, sort of think through how might this affect your process, and I'm sure the assistant superintendent could also speak to this, but, consider a few things about this. The way the legislation is written right now, it says, well, if you have something in your CBA, that is different than this, we'll honor your CBA till it expires, and then this supersedes. And I think that goes back to your bargaining concern, which, may rub folks the wrong way. Let me control my own destiny, let me bargain for it. I might not want what you did here. I think one intention of the legislation, and it's well intended, but this is a very blunt, awkward response. So many school jobs are fractional FTEs. You're a 0.25 campus supervisor, and then you're a 0.4, something else, so maybe you're a 0.6, but maybe you'd like to be a 1.0, so you can earn a living wage. And all districts sort of struggle with this, how do we cobble together enough FTE, for people who want that, or, is there a way to do that? This has some pretty, like I said, blunt and awkward approaches to that basically say, well, if somebody wants to do that and it's feasible, define feasible, right? To cobble these things together, the district will make accommodations to enable someone to do that. And this is tremendously problematic when you start to consider that a lot of school district jobs are student facing and you can't choose your times. If you're an IA, you have to be there when the student is there. That's what being an IA is, right? So there are only some very much smaller number of jobs, I think, that have any kind of flexibility, if there's any flexibility to do the work. And I think if you asked most school staff, these accommodations really work, they would have trouble finding a lot of instances where it would work to cobble something together and switch the times for when those jobs are done. So you can see that if this became law, we would start to have an after effect, an unintended consequence. I think of a lot of bickering of, am I being accommodated? Do you have to accommodate me? Is this an unreasonable accommodation because we've cobbled these together? So, to the extent this is trying to accomplish that, it is not a good way to accomplish it. It needs to be rethought in a different way. The other thing that I think is an unintended consequence that I'm sure would happen here is we have an underlying philosophy about how we write minimum quals here, which you just articulated, or I forget which of you said it, which is, the bare minimum, to come do the job.
Right.
If something like this passed and said, you don't necessarily need years of experience in doing that particular kind of work, and some of this work, bus driver, facilities, electrician, versus, just that you have been with the district for 35 years. The training burden would be tremendous on someone to get you up to speed to actually be able to do that, be an electrician, be a bus driver. And I think what you would find starts to change the underlying philosophy about how commissions would write their minimum quals, right? Because it is the only line of defense you have from taking someone who has exactly no experience in a role, who could get there by dint of tenure, and then you're sitting and looking at each other like, oh, how do we get you trained to be able to do this? And all the while, school is in session, and we need somebody to drive the bus, we need somebody to do the wiring, how long is it gonna take you to get up to speed? It's not sit for an hour-long Zoom and learn it. So again, this is a really blunt tool that I think doesn't do it well, which is why I support writing that position.
One additional comment, adding on to what Commissioner Goldstein just said, which I agree with. about the minimum qualifications, that, yes, you know, if this law were to pass and, the district is forced by law to place an individual who only has met the most minimum qualifications and has never even been in the classification that we're talking about, is coming from a different classification, then in all likelihood, I mean, I don't know how I would look at it, but in all likelihood, we'd be looking at minimum qualifications which are increased in terms of what someone needs to have accomplished, or the experience that they have to meet those minimum qualifications. And I think that would have a very negative impact on another important goal that we have, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. One of the reasons we keep our minimum qualifications at a minimum is so that more applicants can come in from diverse walks of life. And they can come in, and if they do well on the testing and et cetera, they have an opportunity to be hired in our district. That creates diversity, equity, and inclusion. Whereas this kind of has the effect potentially of closing that door. I think that's one of the unintended consequences that the governor was talking about, and that came up at the Zoom webinar as well.
You know, to your point earlier, and it's just so interesting about why it's not in here. If this was written a little differently, to say within a job class, it could have better legs, you know. And I don't know if in the legislative process, maybe someone will add that, you know, and we would want to rethink it, but it sure isn't in here now.
Well, given the history of just Berkeley as a city, I'm all for making sure our voices are heard. I don't want to profess being an expert on this actual bill, which is why I'm asking questions about the ramifications. But I'm all for, once we decide, that we definitely add our voice to the letter. So for what that's worth, I don't have much to add on the bill itself or the impact it might have, but I'm definitely making sure our voices are heard.
So I guess our question, more than anything else, is do we defer a decision on this, give us all an opportunity to read the bill more closely, and speak to whoever we want to speak to about it. Others might come to our meeting and give us their impressions. We have a meeting on the 29th. This bill isn't going to be passed right away. So there is, and you know, thank you, Sarah, very much for giving us this updated
Yeah, this is great.
letter. I mean, now the list of districts, and I mean, I think I see that the Association of School Boards is on this. Lots of districts are on here. I haven't, you know, looked at them all yet. And of course, it affects community colleges. That's why you also see community colleges in here.
I see superintendents that have signed, I see chairs of personnel commissions who have signed, I see chancellor titles who have signed. So, you know, there's a range, you know, if we as the commission felt strongly we should be represented, we could. I think it's worth also referring this to the superintendent, you know, for her consideration. And, you know, she may want to talk about it with us. You know, I don't know how strongly she feels about it.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily support that. This would be our decision. I'm sure the superintendent can sign on for the district or
Well,
not.
right, no, I mean, at the district level, right, we would sign, we would decide for ourselves what to do. But she has a lot going on, so doing an early referral is a good way to eventually, I think, get it in the mix for her.
She's got staff for that. Right? But our staff has,
Not as much
our staff-
as you
our
would
staff
hope.
has our own things to
Right.
take care of. So anyway, I'm definitely a fan of making sure our voices are heard. Yeah.
Well, how about, shall we defer this
Definitely
until
defer
our,
this.
April 29th meeting and put it on the, agenda for that meeting, and maybe by that time, we'll be able to.
I would
then
say
we
May.
can-
I would say May. April 29th is
It's a short bill.
Yeah.
It's 2
2 weeks.
Yeah.
2 weeks, yeah, I got pretty busy 2 weeks. This bill isn't going anywhere anytime soon, right?
Well, I mean, I don't know, maybe somebody
Well,
else knows the
consider-
legislative process
Yeah,
better.
but consider the timing.
I think it's
The
June,
ledge.
end of June.
Well, no. The ledge will finalize bills working backwards. They try to finalize bills at the end of the summer, at the end of August, basically, so that it can go to the governor, and governor has until mid-October to sign the bills. But the ledge has to finalize and give them over. The ledge takes a summer break. So, you kind of have phase one now of this being heard. There's a break, and then phase two, to the mad slide to the end of August, finishing the bills. We only have 3 more meetings. April, May,
June.
and June. So we don't have much time on our end to make our decision for ourselves, much less a referral. And when I consider the timetable of the district, they are rapidly going to be consumed in budget stuff. So I would advocate actually for an early referral now to the superintendent, who may just say, look, too busy, don't care, do whatever you want to do, I'm not interested, just to get it on our radar. But for our purposes, we should try very hard to have a discussion about it, I think.
Would it be,
No, we can discuss it this month. That may not be enough time for me, I don't know. It seems pretty straightforward. Straightforward. So I'm open to discussing it, on the 29th.
Okay.
I'm open to that.
Well, we'll pass a couple of motions, I think, to get this on the radar. Maybe we should have a little bit of a discussion, and I'll call you 1 second. Charlie.
Sure.
A little bit of a discussion about the referral to the superintendent. As I see it, and I think I support the idea, but I understand that this is our decision, Personnel Commission, absolutely. However, I do think we try to be as collaborative as we possibly can. So if whether it's the superintendent or the assistant, this might go really to the assistant superintendent because this is an HR matter. If the district has a strong opinion one way or another on this bill, I'd sort of be interested in hearing what it is. It's not that that's gonna be conclusive for us, but I personally would like to know what it is, just as I very much wanna hear from the union, BCCE and Local 21, to see what, after they've had a chance to study this further. This is sponsored by CSEA, so it's a different labor union, for want of a better term. I don't know that matters, but it is different. So I would very much want to hear what their opinion about this is as well, before we make our decision one way or another. So
Something I
that's my 2
see
cents.
here, to the degree, we might want to refer to a few places. When I look at the signatories, I see HR officials, I see business office officials, someone in Pauline Follinsby's role, and I see superintendents, so we could refer it, to those 3. I guess I assume here that the operations in the superintendent's office are such that she'll delegate, where she thinks it belongs, if she wants to do something further with it.
And we can copy those other individuals in whatever referral. So let's see, in terms of order, maybe the first thing is we do discuss not discuss, but decide on whether or not we want to refer this to the district. And I would leave it up to Charlie as to how that would get accomplished, whether it be the superintendent, whether it be the assistant superintendent of HR, both of them, or how that gets done. But before that, did you want to make a comment first?
I did, just a suggestion, I believe it might help if I invited George Cole or Philip Gordillo or someone who's kind of an expert in this area. Because
Great idea.
there's folks at the CSPCA who are working with the legislators on the other side, as you saw, because Chairman Rutter came to the meeting. And I might ask them if they're available, and that might help you kind of have an expert answer these questions, and I can maybe I can ask if Philip is available, and or George, or there's a couple, or actually, our friend over here at Alameda County, because she's right over here. So I'll try to get a speaker to speak to it and get their general understanding, and then maybe they can answer questions for the three of you more about this. So I might suggest that, just so that you have how does our next meeting look? Is it pretty packed?
There are some items, but we could fit. We have room.
Okay.
We have it scheduled for 3 hours, so.
Okay.
We could use it.
Okay, so.
And if there's something that we want to eliminate, I will be more than.
Okay. Well, see, this is new
active.
this is something I now ask Sarah and Aaron. We did it before, but now I know you like to stick to the 3 hours, which I appreciate.
And I appreciate
No
that, 'cause
piling
I
on.
have a hard
Yeah.
stop and.
But I might suggest that. I think that I couldn't invite all of you to this meeting, but I think the next time we have a CSPCA meeting, I may invite one of the other commissioners just so they can hear. But there's a lot of really good dialogue. There's a lot of experts out there that are more involved in this, and I'm going to go ahead with your okay and invite one of them to our next meeting so they can speak to it, present it, and then that way they may be able to answer your questions.
Something I notice here, as I'm just looking at the logos, there are lots of districts on here that are not merit districts.
Right.
Which tells me on the HR side, everybody's got some concerns about how this would work.
Well, I will tell you, Commissioner Goldstein, that I brought up the MMBA. And it's because I was an HR director for 17 years. And if on the HR side, I would be upset if I had been deprived of my right to bargain, because each district operates a certain way. And once we said that, there were some folks on the call that were like, yeah, we also lose this right. So I think that just generally, I think fundamentally, even if you're not a merit district, you want to be in control of what you do.
Sure. No, it tells me a lot that it's not just, territorial
Right.
defense.
Right.
There are other issues.
And again, just from the 12th to today, 4 or 5 days, look how that list has expanded. It'll probably expand even further by next week. But Alameda was one of the first to sign on.
Okay, well, to move this along, I'll make the motion to refer AB 2088, is that the right number? To the district, the Berkeley Unified School District, the superintendent or the superintendent's designee for their views on 2088, and letting them know that we are going to be discussing it at our April 29th meeting, and would like their input. So I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
It's been seconded. So all those in favor say aye. Aye. No and abstain?
I abstain.
An abstention. Okay, the motion passes with one abstention. Okay, then, I'll make another motion to defer discussion and make this a conference item for our next meeting on April 29th to review whether or not the Berkeley Personnel Commission wishes to sign on to the letter opposing 2088.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Great.
Okay, I think that's all for that. So we're on to our second opportunity for public comment. I will wait a minute and see if anybody raises their virtual hand. And Mr. Hernandez has raised his hand, so Mr. Hernandez, please go ahead.
Yeah, you got my brain spinning like 1,000 miles per hour on this. So I'm thinking of all the pros and cons, and I know there's a lot. I do have one question, I guess, is you have a list in front of you. I did not hear if there was any unions on that list, and I would assume probably not. And of course, I'm going to say the obvious. Of course, the district would be opposed to it 100%. I think that's a no-brainer. I just want to make a comment about, there are a lot of pros and cons, and I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm glad you're deferring it. That gives the union, BCCE, me being one of the officers, the BCCE, a chance to reach out to our members and see how they feel about it. And then we could come back and just give you that input about our members and how they feel about it. As a union officer, this could be huge. I would like everyone to think about this. It would be huge because one of my biggest issues is promotion, right? It's like, if you give BCCE if you give classified workers a pathway to get promoted, that's clear and obvious, like no obstacles, that this is the way they could get promoted. I think that's huge in trying to draw people into the district as workers. Come here. You have a legit chance if you apply yourself. And the last comment I'll make is, I worked in a facility with over 300 workers at one time, and everything was done by seniority. Every job was done by seniority. And yes, there's pros and cons. There's pros and cons to every way, how you hire, how you put people in positions. But it is by far the cleanest, and it works because people understand it. Everybody is on board with it as far as workers go, because they know, again, they know if they could do that job, then it goes by seniority, no questions asked. And it works. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank, and we very much look forward to BCCE's input into opposition or non-opposition to this piece of legislation. Let's see if anybody else has a comment. I don't see anything else, so we'll close the public comment period. And that leaves our next meeting, which, as we've been discussing, is.
Actually, before we close public comment, I just wanted to ask, you had mentioned before we started that you wanted to acknowledge some of the work that some of your sister departments are doing here at Berkeley, the federal budget.
Oh, yeah, I can do it twice.
Okay.
I wanted to acknowledge Pauline and Emily Mayer specifically because I was very impressed with how they found ways to make cuts without affecting personnel. And I really appreciated that because it would have been easier having been working in other districts, let's just start cutting people. And they didn't do that. And I appreciated that very much. So I'm going to recognize them probably again because this is a very fluid process, but I wanted to acknowledge that I was very impressed and very much appreciative of that approach. So
Thank you.
thank you.
So again, our next meeting, as we've been discussing, is Monday, April 29th. And the meeting time, we should all be cognizant of, is at 1 p.m. Rather than 4:30. So we'll be meeting, and I assume we're meeting in the boardroom
We are.
on Monday, April 29th. Okay. With that, I think that our meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone, for
Hi,
joining.
everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, Milton.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.